Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking all the Vault Hunters in Borderlands 4 on a tier list from best to worst. This is going to be looking at Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 here against Subjugator and Thol the Invincible, but also against Bloomreaper and general mobbing. Now I also want to preface this video by saying that all the Vault Hunters in this game can get the Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time, just some are a lot more reliant on having a god roll of gear to get their effects out, so we'll be looking mostly at the skill trees here and just a general overview of each of these and how to get the most out of all of them. Now, we're first going to take a look at Vex with her 3 skill trees. First, the Dead Ringer. Vex across the board benefits a lot from kill skills, so typically you want to roll into the greens tree because of Grave Power can double the amount of stacks you can get, basically doubling the effects here, and on top of this she can also activate the kill skills with critical hits. A lot of Vex's builds are going to be taking this exact line here from the green skill tree, but in all honesty, Vex's most powerful skill is Reverberations. This is insane. This is melee required, but the thing is, this has actually got a huge boost whenever Bloomreaper dropped, as that gave us a gun in all elements that can trigger melee damage. So this doesn't count as a melee attack, but rather melee damage. So that doesn't trigger a Groundbreaker, but it stores it up. Melee attacks will trigger the Groundbreaker, which Vex also has a way to trigger from range with higher specs here. So this skill tree is actually quite synergetic because she got abilities that boost up her melee damage, ones that boost up her minions damage, and she also has this insanely powerful skill. So melee damage dealt by Vex or her minions has a chance to deal incendiary melee damage. This has a 50% chance at 5 stacks and deals upwards of 150%. The Flame Dancer class mod can let you get 10 points in this, and it's insane. What's crazy about Reverberations is that this is skill damage, so we're getting a lot of our bonuses here from things like Skillcraft, which can give ourselves upwards of 65% extra skill damage and critical hit chance, which can trigger Groundbreaker and give huge amounts of damage to Groundbreaker. Even more funny about this is that Groundbreaker can also get Reverberation, so it has a 50% chance of dealing 150% damage at 5 stacks. This is a crazy skill and one of the best in the entire game. And Vex isn't too bound to using a certain class mod with this. I like the Teen Witch in general just because this gives her Overshield, which lets her then get Watts for Dinner, which is giving even further shock damage on top of the fire damage. Now, this excels against Subjugator and Thol the Invincible because Thol, the easier one to face off against, has a massive health bar. Subjugator is our biggest weakness because of the Elemental of Eater effects, which are just plain annoying. Now in the past, this is one of the ones that I use while I leveled up for the first time I'm playing through this game. Dark Pact is pretty fun because this gives your minions a lot of survivability. Hellish Harvest, the augment's very powerful because they'll do a spinning attack which restores their health, and the Reapers can actually last quite a long time. Now we're going to be using the Grim Reaper ability here, which is really nice, but again, we do have to benefit from the green skill tree, and things like Bleed, which we'll talk about in a moment, also can stack off of all the crazy damage that we're getting with Reverberations on top of it. So this is one of the best combos in the game. You saw it there. That was in Ultimate Vault Hunter 7. And where this build really excels is that we can basically go ahead here, do a ton of damage, throw a knife and trigger Groundbreaker. That didn't really work out as well. It is a bit RNG dependent, but you saw there, getting that Reverberations damage is pretty crazy. The big downside to this in Subjugator and Thol the Invincible, like a lot of builds, is ammunition. You basically are running around trying to pick up as much shotgun ammo as you can, dropping down your Reapers often, and it's very powerful, but it does have some limitations. But you can see this here. We're able to actually burst the boss down really quickly, go in for our attack there, boom, we trigger Groundbreaker with the Reverberations, basically one-shotting that phase. Now this build is a little bit gear dependent because you do need a mantra, and most people don't like to face off against Bloomreaper. You don't need a god roll mantra to be able to do this, but it does help having one that's got Ripper and Jacobs on it. The beautiful thing about the mantra, not that this is about the mantra, but it does splash damage, so this is actually a good way to farm Bloomreaper. But since it does splash, melee, and gun damage, you're getting a lot of bonuses here, and there's specialization. So the nice thing is having a gun that deals melee damage, they're kind of a staple of all Borderlands games, and I'm glad we got one early on to really enable this build to its highest potential, but you kind of do need that gun for it to succeed. Just because Reverberations being triggered off of melee damage is so insanely strong. It's not likely we're going to see another melee damage gun, but if we ever do, it will obviously benefit this quite a bit. I also want to mention some other builds, like you don't have to use the Reapers, you can actually use these Spectres here, and Gastarbate's pretty funny because the Spectres, if you do a dodge, you can give them your heavy ordnance and they can shoot off a heavy ordnance, but they're honestly with Heirloom here, they get a copy of your equipped gun and it does a pretty insane amount of damage here. You can still probably get the Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time, but it's just so much easier using this setup here with Grim Reaper and Hellish Harvest. And I'm doing all this live just to showcase it to you guys, so excuse me if I end up making any mistakes. But another thing is the slippery grenade is a melee grenade, which will take our attunement. So we got fire damage here. Basically, we got a ton of damage there. You saw his health bar getting deleted. The only downside is this does do splash damage, but we were able to get the Jacob's ricochet there, which is amazing. And then we can constantly keep popping down our Reapers here, as they deal melee damage as well, which we can then use to trigger our strong abilities against Thol there. Typically, you want to try and get as much damage off as possible in a 5-second window and then splash it with our melee ability there, but this is a very easy platinum time. And honestly, I gotta say, Reverberation's hard carries this. I'm just gonna throw it into the S tier. I think Dead Ringer is so crazy. It may be a very high A tier, but you saw it there. This doesn't require you to think too much. Just shoot and throw a knife at it. It's crazy. I wasn't even optimizing there for it, but I will have all these builds linked in the pinned comment, so you can check those out if you're curious. But this build is slightly gear dependent, requiring a mantra, but the thing is, you don't need a perfect mantra. Even just a Ripper mantra can work very well, and you'll consistently get that Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 time just because Reverberations is so insane, and Harspecs let you do it from a distance. But this is obviously also carried by the green skill tree Incarnate here. Now, Incarnate is also really powerful because you can actually run with this exact same setup and just use this skill tree here instead. Messing around with this build is also pretty powerful because you can, again, use the mantra. The only downside is Witchy Triggerfinger recently got a nerf. It used to actually trigger Grave Power to count it as a kill skill, so you used to be able to get 6 stacks, giving ourselves a 45% extra gun damage that it no longer gets. I guess 90% total plus gun damage, now it's only 45%, but this skill tree is required to make the blue skill tree good. Both of these skill trees are pretty powerful, and this one is the less gear reliant one because you can use a lot of different weapons. If you don't spec into this, you can go all the way down, take Ars Arcana here, increasing our skill damage, getting even further life steal with Essence Leech, Blood is Power, turning that into bonus kinetic damage, seeing big bleeds with the Bloodletter here. But really the bread and butter of the green skill tree is Grave Sights, giving ourselves a kill skill to further increase our critical hit damage. Grave Implements, giving ourselves 120% gun damage once we have max stacks of this. Bleed, just being a very powerful skill. Despite getting a huge nerf, it's still extremely powerful, as skill critical hits will apply this. So you can get bleeds off your Reverberations if you get a crit off of that. There's so many ways to build around this. It's just a very versatile build. You can get the increased skill chance, critical hit chance, so that our skills have a higher chance of triggering that, or you can go with an increased fire rate if you prefer using guns. I also don't mind using Phase Pocket to increase magazine size. This makes it a little bit more reliable with using some weapons to trigger Witchy Triggerfinger, so that you can constantly keep throwing at your Eldritch Blast. The Vibe Check is really nice, being a chain skill. This can deal with the Bloomreaper crystals really easily. I also like Heart Pierce. It does take your health, but it will heal you as well, and this just gives you an on-demand way to use Witchy Triggerfinger. But honestly, Mortal Terror is just so crazy powerful. This is only a 5% chance to get a kill skill upon critically hitting enemies, but our minions in the other skill tree can use this, but our Eldritch Blast can also get this, and it chains around. If you got the critical hit knife, that just gives you an easy way to get this maxed out very quickly, which is amazing because there's a lot of additional enemies in the boss fights here. This also has Guns and Needles, which is a kill skill, which gives you your rep kits back, so you can use this to get your rep kits. The green skill tree is probably her true strongest across the board. It's just that the Reverberations of the blue skill tree is so insane, but they both go together very well. And you saw there, we almost ran out of ammunition in the last fight. So the general flow to this is to typically use our Eldritch Blast here to get our ammunition back. That starting wave will give you it back as well. You can see here I'm still using that same kind of setup that I did last time with the overall skills. You can go and spec more into the green skill tree. Another thing I want to mention is that using the Crow Source Assault Rifle, it's one of the best guns in this game, works very well. You do have to set up with the new firmware to get the most bang for your buck with that setup, but it is insanely strong, so I do want to mention that. Oh, I have the wrong element out here. But yeah, kind of the same idea here with this. You can do some pretty crazy stuff with Groundbreaker. This would be end up one of the strongest setups for Vex, but you have a lot more versatility with this because you don't have to rely on just melee damage. You can use things like the Crow Source to do a lot of damage. You can use a Flash Cyclone. You have a lot more options for weapons. There is a new class mod that helps out with the Grim Sister here. So class mods are weird because they do obviously impact the skill trees because they give you different skills. The skill rolls on this will give you Mortal Terror, which is nice because you can take this, but typically if you're going into the green skill tree, you're going to get Mortal Terror anyway. So this would have been probably better on a different, like a red or a blue skill tree focused one, so that you could activate your kill skills a little bit easier without that high investment. Because typically if you're going with the green skill tree, you're likely going straight down to Mortal Terror anyway. But this just lets you do a few different types of builds, but this one isn't super crazy powerful. The longer you're in Incarnate, you do even more damage. And this will double for the action skill damage as well. And whenever Incarnate ends, you'll also do a phase explosion to give yourself your ammunition back. This is not a bad class mod, but the Team Witch just ends up being one of the best choices for this type of build because you get more lifesteal and that just makes you unkillable. Now, as a whole, the green skill tree is definitely better than the blue skill tree, but in this, if we're looking at single skills, Reverberations is hard to go without in a lot of setups for Vex. This is tough, like, because I feel like both of these are really good. I might actually just put them down to the A tier because we do have some really strong ones coming up. I do think that Reverberations is just one of the most insane powerful skills in this game, and I do want to recognize that. But yeah, Vex is quite powerful with this particular setup, focusing on that melee damage trigger. But you can also easy enough with Incarnate use the ability to use like Crow Sourced, although you become more gear dependent at that point, but you're more open to use different things for mobbing and even against Bloomreaper the Invincible. Now for the red skill tree, there was a class one that got added with Bloomreaper, the Configuration. Nightmare Rifts from the new DLC. Configuration lets you open up these rifts. They're normally a bit lackluster unless you're using an underbarrel that can charge up some pretty insane damage. I'm using the potato launcher whenever I pull these out, and they're dealing that underbarrel damage, and then using different things like the Dead Wire skill here. Whenever we deal gun damage, there's a chance to create a Spark Remnant that'll do shock minion damage, which rolls on this class mod, so you can get insane amounts, up to 800% of gun damage dealt, which when paired with the Grave Current, which gives bonus shock damage as a kill skill, this can do some pretty insane stuff. The only problem is this is the only way to make the red skill tree powerful, and the red action skill, Trouble does literally nothing in every single fight. What we're doing is open up these potato thrower rifts to do some pretty insane damage. This, in my opinion, is a gimmick build because you're heavily reliant on the class mod in an underbarrel that may end up getting nerfed at some point to do any amounts of damage. It is possible, again, every single build can do Ultimate Vault Hunter 7, but if you have to farm for like the absolute perfect gear to make this even possible, and you're doing something like this where you're really not really using your guns too much, you basically are just pulling up these rifts, trying to get them to hit Subjugator so you don't have to fight him in the second phase. And then doing the exact same thing for Thol here. This, again, build is very strong, but it kind of falls into that gear gimmicky build where if you just had red skill tree and none of this attached, you're not really able to do that. So it is kind of a tough thing to balance because obviously like things like Reverberations are such powerful skills. The red skill tree just has this, really. And without that particular setup, Deadwire does do a decent bit of damage because at 10 points, it's 800% of gun damage dealt with a 2-second cooldown. But it's when you deal gun damage, and typically your guns aren't going to do crazy high amounts of damage. The Crow Source being really the main one that could get this to be pretty effective, but you are heavily reliant on gear. These things are really hard to balance on a tier list because while it is possible and you can get a pretty consistent clear, this one is definitely feeling a bit gimmicky compared to just like having trouble out and shooting your gun type deal, which obviously everyone would like to do. You do have to do some weird setups revolved. And I'm also trying to keep this balance for people that don't have like hundreds of hours to play this game, because I mean, to only be able to do a build to take out this in the platinum time, if you have to spend like a few hundred hours farming the gear to get that perfect roll to make it happen, that does make things a little bit more challenging. But yeah, you can see it there. It's possible to get platinum with Trouble. But just one thing about this is the capstone here is kind of funny because Trouble does sweet nothing throughout the entire fight. Trouble will mark the boss, but this makes us deal more damage to it. So the red skill tree definitely needs some buffs across the board. I do think Trouble could literally do 10 times the amount of damage to a boss, and even then it still wouldn't even make a big difference just because Trouble does literally nothing. There should be some rework at some point for the red skill tree, but with configuration right now, that's the way to make this work. And I like Trouble. I think Trouble is awesome, but just it's for leveling mainly, mobbing kind of because it can pull aggro. But most situations, Deadringer is going to be a lot better. And I guess if we're to look at this from a whole perspective, Deadringer is just so good. Like I'd like to put Phase Familiar a little bit higher, but if I'm just being fair, you have to use particular gear to make this to be perfectly set up. And while you do need to use a mantra gun here to make these strong, I guess the Incarnate here would be a little bit better in that case. It's just Reverberations is so powerful with Groundbreaker. If you don't have the DLC, which actually a lot of people don't have the DLC, I get a lot of comments regarding that, you can scratch this. It's not possible because you can't get that class mod. But if you do have the DLC, it does obviously make it a possibility. It's just the Dead Ringer mantra is free to get, and the Incarnate can really use whatever, but there's higher peaks here with the blue skill tree in my opinion. I spent 15 minutes here talking about Vex. This is a tough one to balance. Next is Amon. Now, Amon's a bit of a tricky guy. We're going to first look at Cybernetics. Now, again, all of these can get Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time, so if you don't like where I'm putting these, there's just some that are a lot easier and require a lot less setup, and yeah, that's if you need to use a save editor to get the perfect gear to make a build possible, it's probably not going to be that accessible to most people. Obviously, there's a lot of things to take into consideration, so green skill tree, Amon is kind of rough. The Forge drones fall into the same thing that Trouble does, where their damage is so pitiful that we can't really use them to rely on anything. What I like the Forge drones for is they deal melee damage, which means they can easily trigger our My Touch is Death, which lets us trigger the best skill tree, or the best skills in Amon's repertoire is the Berserk here, giving ourselves bonus cryo damage when we activate our Forge skill. The green skill tree has the shortest cooldown of a 30-second cooldown, and what's amazing about that is that this lets us get this, and also there is only red, which is a kill skill, which can give ourselves the increased maximum bonus damage to 600%, which is scaling off of that, which we trigger with My Touch is Death. So you can literally run the green skill tree and have that function, but here we're splitting the difference. We have to kind of rely on all of these. You can go with a heavy skill tree investment here and go all in on skill damage, and they do pretty respectable amounts of damage if you're fully spec'd into it. It's just a lot of these skills are kind of weaker in terms of their effects. Amon's big thing is Ordnance. That's where he gets a lot of ability and damage from, and it seems like all of the skill trees take that into consideration, because like Cacophony, Ordnance damage. Endless Bombardment, one of my favorite skills here, have a chance to refund his ammo. This does require to use the Heimdall, and that is a multi-hit weapon that got released in the newest DLC. The Heimdall is pretty insane though. It shoots off these heads that fire off a bunch of extra pellets that do a ton of damage. And you can kind of rely on Endless Bombardment here, but you're typically best off taking something like Primal Surge alongside Tail of the Comet, which whenever we deal ordnance damage, we get a cryo status effect, which will trigger Primal Surge. And the cool thing about this is it's not just heavy ordnance that gets restored. If we're using things like the Mantra, for example, you can restore your ammunition using that. Now, I did post a build the other day going over a green skill tree build that can get the Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time. With this here, you're using ordinances. I know there's other types of setups. I'm still experimenting to get the right one here because it is a little bit trickier to get value out of. With this, you do have to swap between your ordnance and bring out a gun here so you can delete those annoying things that give him his shield back. But when the Heimdall gets rolling with There Is Only Red, which you can tell because there's the little things on the side of the screen here, the damage from this is quite insane. It just scales up pretty quickly and does a lot of damage. And you can see it here against Subjugator when they all get spitting at him like that. It does insane damage. I cut it for time, but you get the idea. Activate your Forge skill, get your There Is Only Red and damage going. The Mantra is great for that because it deals melee damage as well, so it can trigger There Is Only Red alongside our Forge drones, which also do melee damage. The green skill tree, it's okay. I mean, it does require a huge setup to get actually a huge amount of value out of it, but it can get the Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time. Don't know why he was glitching out like that, but it's a lot more difficult. Amon has risen a lot. The Heimdall was one of the best things that he ever got. You can also use a Slippy on a lot of these setups because he can regenerate his grenades pretty effectively. I know people are going to get upset if I don't put Amon like super highs. There's a lot of super hardcore Amon fans. I like Amon. This one just requires a lot more setup and just isn't really that amazing unless you got that perfect gear. I do think the green skill tree needs a bit of a buff somewhere to make it a little bit more accessible because, yeah, the other skill trees just end up giving him way more bang for his buck, and just there's a lot of things to take into account here, so don't get upset, but I do think Cybernetics is possibly like a C to B tier here. It does feel a little bit less gimmicky than Phase Familiar here, so I'll put it like, maybe we'll just be fair and put it into the B tier. I don't know. I feel like it is something that's a little bit lackluster compared to the others. Amon did rise quite a bit though, which we'll show you here. The red skill tree, we'll talk about Calamity next. What's great about Calamity is this is a melee attack that we can do, meaning it's possible to trigger Groundbreaker with this. This is going to store ordnance damage. Amon heavily relies on ordnance damage to get a big boost to his overall like damage, whether it be like a Slippy Grenade or the Heimdall, my personal preference. There's a few setups. I posted builds here where you go down into the red skill tree and you go with something like electrical fire, because if you get a big burn dot on an enemy, it's going to do shock, or if you get a big shock on an enemy, it also burns them, so you're getting double the amount off it. And what really shines with this red skill tree right now at the very moment is you can turn all your damage into incendiary damage. Just go against Thol the Invincible. He's got a big red health bar, and this, whenever we activate our ordnance, our next gunshot gets turned into fire damage. This is brutal against Subjugator. It's basically, Subjugator is something that Amon does not want to do really at all. Just, it's annoying to deal with the elemental eating effects because he turns all his damage into fire damage. He also has some pretty good abilities here, which increases his skill critical hit, or his critical hit chance and damage. But the big shining star of this skill tree is Berserk. Again, I went over this earlier when I was talking about the green skill tree, because Amon really likes to have this on pretty much all of his setups because it just gives him so much more damage. And you can almost have an infinite uptime depending on your skill setup, because it lasts 15 seconds. There is only red will extend it by 4. It used to be 9 seconds per stack, but it's a kill skill, so you can just continually keep stacking this up. The maximum increased bonus damage comes 600%. There is My Touch is Death, there is only red. You basically will have infinite uptime on this. His Horror Cleave here is the skill tree that I'm using, but typically it's better to go with Storm Cutter. Now, the reason Storm Cutter is so good is because it can, if you hit 4 enemies, basically give you your action skill back immediately. And the big thing about Onslaughter is this is used to trigger Groundbreaker, storing all the damage. So if you have a bunch of Heimdall heads popping off, you can then get Groundbreaker to trigger. You can also use Contamination to give yourself a higher chance of applying status effects. Amon does a lot of damage with status effects as well. Honestly, the red and the blue skill tree are pretty strong. The green, again, all of these can clear Ultimate Vault Hunter 7. It's just this one has an easier time, and they recently buffed this one, giving Bulletstorm even further damage. And I hope they continue to buff Amon in certain areas, because he's really fun to play, but some of the setups do feel a bit clunky and reliant on heavy ordnance to get the most effect out of them. But this setup is a little bit easier to get that platinum time. And honestly, Amon is extremely consistent at getting the platinum Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 time. The Heimdall just being an insanely huge buff to him, and kind of an essential. You can see there, just rip through Thol's first phase like that, no problem. And basically what you want to be doing is, as soon as your grenades get back to 3, that means you can pull your ordnance at any time. You can use a spread launcher and then use the action skill to trigger Groundbreaker. That was not a very great demonstration of it. You can then throw your forge skill, making sure that you got your there is only red active. The red skill tree is pretty crazy, and the damage you can do with this is high. Like, it's really good. It's also a melee damage focused one. So again, it's another setup that really likes the mantra gun. So yeah, it's pretty effective. And against Thol the Invincible, same deal here. You're trying to get as many of these off. Now, Amon does either fire or cryo damage. So again, going against Subjugator is just a huge pain. It's not really something you ever really want to do. But yeah, it's possibly the platinum time pretty easily. Weird thing about Amon though is he really benefits from purple class mods. Hopefully we'll get some good green ones. The new Artificer here, I like it. I like the Artificer in D&D. This is fun because it gives him bullet hail, basically giving him some ricochet damage, but it's not really that effective in this particular setup at the highest difficulty. It can work though, and it's a cool way to just mess around with something different. Now, Amon's red and blue trees are both really effective at what they do. This is giving him a bunch of extra damage. I do think Calamity is pretty solid, especially right now in the current meta, just because incendiary damage is so good against Subjugator and Thol, and he can clear Bloomreaper pretty effective as well. You do want to swap off the Heimdall, and you do require the DLC to get the Heimdall, but he can get by with like Honey Bunches really easily, and you can actually clear this pretty quickly with Honey Bunches, Rocket Socket. I really like the Tongue Wag with the Shrapnel Rockets, so he's got options for heavy ordnance, but he is really a heavy ordnance type of guy. But typically if you're running this with heavy ordnance, you do need the blue skill tree. That's why Amon's such a hard one to balance or talk about as a skill tree in a vacuum. And if I say Amon's not amazing, like, he still can clear the difficulties, most difficult stuff in the game. So don't get offended if I don't say he's perfect. Like, if I say he's not perfect, maybe Gearbox is more likely to give him buffs, which they gave him some buffs on the Subjugator and Thol updates. So that was really nice. Calamity is somewhere around A to B tier. I just think Berserk is such an essential skill for Amon. Yeah, this is tough because, yeah, I think I will throw it in the A tier though. Which brings us to Vengeance. Now, I really like the Vengeance tree. It has some great options. Like, you got Scorched Kairos. Like, it all feels really nice in conjunction with each other. The blue skill tree is his more defensive focused one. Now, whenever you have this, you get Forge Wall here, Firewall here, which is his Forge skill. This will increase projectile damage and speed. It's kind of cool because you can set up that wall and just throw your explosives through it. There was one update where they broke it. It made it so they exploded on the wall, but they seem to fix that, shadow buff, or shadow fixed, I should say. But Scorched Kairos, increase ordnance damage. He's obviously an ordnance type of guy. Tail of the Comet though, this is really impactful because this gives him a way to apply a cryo status effect on ordnance damage, making Subjugator a pain obviously, but what's great about this is the combination of Tail of the Comet with Primal Surge. This is something I've talked about a lot of the time. This gives shield restoration, a 25% chance to get 12% and 24 of your ammo. At higher stacks will be 15 and 30. What's crazy about this though is how good it is at sustaining infinite ordnance. You can have these two skills and get it going infinitely. It also comes on class mods. I have 4 points from the current class mod I'm using, and this actually does make it pretty impactful. He also has gun damage or kill skills that increases overall gun damage. And another very impactful skill is Ballistic Bulwark, which can come on the same class mods that have that. And another amazing skill, the Endless Bombardment. So that's what I'm saying. His purple ones are very synergetic as far as class mods go. But this skill will give overshield when he deals ordnance damage. If you have a couple Heimdall heads out shooting, he's basically unkillable at that point. The blue skill tree heavily does benefit Amon a lot for a lot of the content in this game. Blackout can give him his ordnance a chance to critically hit, which obviously does boost up their damage quite a bit. He does have ricochet damage. A lot of the skills are kind of like not great in certain instances. Like to come down to the left side, you gotta take Wildfire, increasing burning duration, ricochet damage, or Burning Rage, which is a kill skill. Whenever you take out enemies with incendiary damage, you get a stack of Flame Affinity, which gives you reload speed and action skill cooldown. So yeah, it's not amazing in terms of like you're funneled into taking some of these skill options. But I do think he has a very strong core here with Scorch Kairos, boost to the damage, Tail of the Comet, causing a status to then regen your ammo, which also gives you Ballistic Bulwark, overshield, so you got a lot of survivability, which again, Scorch, the more damage you deal, the more overshield you get. So this all fuels together really nicely. I do think his blue skill tree is pretty solid. It's just the bonus damage that you get from There's Only Red and Berserk make this skill tree a little bit better. So I will throw Vengeance here into this tree. It is required for a lot of setups, but you can get the required skills from class mods, and you really only need like a 10-point increase to this to make most ordnance build setups good. If you got the Cyborg class mod, the Grenadier class mod also works pretty well too. I do hope that Amon gets some more buffs because he is fun to play, but there are some ways where I think he could be a little bit improved. I think it's a little fun fact here. Cyclops just released in Marvel Rivals, who's voiced by Ray Chase, who voices Amon, who also is the creator of the game Date Everything. Even funnier, Rafa is voiced by Alejandro Saab, who voices Deadpool in Marvel Rivals. And Vex is voiced by Judy Alice Lee, who voices Luna Snow in Rivals. So it's kind of funny, all three of them. But what's not funny is how rough Rafa is currently. I already did a whole video talking about this. I think they need to change some of the, they need to buff him up. It is, again, possible to get Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time, but Rafa is very, very rough as it currently stands, and he used to be really fun. I'm gonna first start off with Arc Knives here. This is actually kind of insane with a particular setup. Oddly enough, the Buster class mod, which is meant for Apophis Lance, is the best class mod for blue or green Rafa here, because there's some pretty funny interactions when we get a bunch of bonus damage on the Arc Knives here, using Groundbreaker to trigger it, and then since it's a skill and an action skill damage, Permalast from that Buster class mod gives it a 30% chance to double the damage, and you guys will see, this is actually an insane setup. I will have this build also linked in the comments. This is more so what I consider to be a gimmick build, however, but it can do a lot of damage. So what we're doing is I'm going to shoot off a healing drone here, and then we're going to go into our Arc Knives here. And once we get the Alter Cabron, they're scaling up our damage. We're going to go. It is annoying to deal with a flying enemy like this, but what happens in a second here, you can see we just one-shot we one-shot with Subjugator. I guess I should say two-tapped him. Thol's coming down. Thol just died from our ordnance. Everything's scaling up to some insane damage here. Yeah, it's absurd how powerful this setup is. But this is what I consider to be more so like a gimmick setup. We're using the Sparky Shield as well to get insane damage. And you're relying on RNG luck here to get this. If we go against Subjugator in the second phase, it's game over. So yeah, that's lovely. I love that shield. But this is actually insane because it's one of the fastest ways to clear Subjugator and Thol the Invincible. And with this setup, we can get our action skill going pretty crazy here. So the left click is how you're able to get up high there. And you see a couple taps once the damage gets scaling. Permalast makes it do insane damage. And I didn't even fully optimize this here. There are ways to make this better. But what we do is we just go in and melee here and then just hope that it doubles the damage. See that there, platinum. Yeah, it's a weird build. You have to do that particular setup or you're not getting this clear. So you must be thinking, this is an easy S tier. That is the fastest clear that we've seen yet. Well, there is a weird thing about this because I feel like this is going to get nerfed again at some point. I posted a build 8 months ago using Groundbreaker per my last. Per my last used to actually scale off of overdrive. So you used to have a 150% chance to trigger if you had your overdrive scaled up, which means that it would just infinitely loop with damage towards itself. That got fixed. It can no longer do that. But again, it came back and it's insanely strong. I don't think it's meant to do this much damage, but basically there's a lot. I will save you guys a huge explanation, but we're getting a bunch of bonus damage, which is triggering Groundbreaker, which is triggering Permalast to trigger again. If you don't have Permalast, it doesn't do this crazy damage. We're also getting some pretty crazy buffs here from all the other points. Oddly enough, asymmetric warfare, indirect projectiles, these aren't ricochets. It's action skill damage, meaning it buffs up our knives, which is weird because you wouldn't consider that to be an indirect projectile, but it is. And Infernal Protocol makes us take damage, but even crazier about this, I was told that you can go with Rubber Band Man, which gives you lifesteal. And the funny thing about that is since we deal damage to ourselves, we heal ourselves for the damage, which then gives us our Alter Cabron. I was just using the Underbarrel because that's something I've used in the past. There's some pretty silly synergies here. I do have a feeling this will end up getting nerfed at a certain point. You get some crazy bonus damage here from Collaborative Ignition. Yeah, this build, it's up in the air whether it'll get nerfed or not. It's crazy, but you do need this one particular setup. You need the perfect role of a Buster class mod, which again, I want to try and keep gear out of this as much as possible. Class mods are kind of the exception because they come with skills on them. You do need the 5 points in Permalast to make the damage crazy. And you also do need the Sparky Shield. You also need the Destructo Disco because I went on over this in detail on my Rafa video, but he has a chance to drop an ordnance in or a grenade. And the problem is most grenades will one-shot him. It's so silly. Destructo Disco doesn't end up hurting ourselves, and that's where we get all the crazy damage from. So this build, in my opinion, is a gimmick build. Yeah, you do need this particular setup for it to work properly. For that, I'm going to put it into the B tier. Again, it could, like if you look at it in a vacuum, you're like, wow, that killed it faster than all the others. It should be S tier. This requires the most amount of gear, and it isn't really that fun. Not that this is a fun tier list, it's more so for the overall power, but if you take Permalast out of the equation, this doesn't work. It is requiring a very particular setup with the Sparky Shield, and you need the grenade as well for this to actually do its thing. Not to mention, you also would like to have the maxed out Skillcraft and Action Fist or Rubber Band Man, so it is, in all definitions, what I think to be a gimmick build. It is strong, don't get me wrong. I previously would put this in the D tier, but it is a crazy fast clear time. It's pretty silly, but that does bring us to our next point here, Peace Breaker Cannons. Now, this got nerfed heavily because of a few different things. Rafa got a rough change with Bullet Buddy Deluxe. It used to be 8 seconds, it's now 4 seconds. The problem with Bullet Buddy Deluxe is that you go, wah, and do a little animation, which is eating up that 4 seconds of time. At 8 seconds, we just kind of ignored that because it wasn't a huge deal. But with 4 seconds, and considering you're likely going to use a Ripper gun, because Ripper just is one of the better ones in this game, you're kind of in a tough position with 2 seconds of infinite ammo. I think that I've talked over this in detail in my other video, but I think this needs to work with heavy ordnance, and it needs to go to either 6 seconds without the animation or 8 seconds with the animation. But the red skill tree is pretty decent until we look at the things that hit Rafa. He doesn't have a consistent source of bonus damage outside of indirect projectiles here, which is Tedior, thrown guns, action skill weapons, and it doesn't always trigger properly. Like with Red Rafa, you're incentivized not to take a capstone ability, which just feels a little bit weird. The Peacebreaker cannons used to be insane because you use Mixologist with an Underbarrel, it would take 10% of that damage. The Underbarrel Beam Toss would do crazy damage. It used to have a lot of very powerful synergies that don't work anymore, but even at its very core, Rafa is the soldier who should be good at shooting guns. He's not really that great. The nerfs to the bod stickies, though, is what really exposed this, because previously what you do for Rafa for bossing was use Chaosin stickies or the bod stickies, use the infinite ammo from Bullet Buddy Deluxe, and then the boss was dead because it would scale up to insane amounts of damage. Even furthermore, using like a Daedalus enhancement to further increase your fire rate so you can put a lot of stickies onto the enemy. But the biggest change of all is class mod, unfortunately. This is, again, a piece of gear that's taking into account this here. But the problem is the Dancer class mod used to give 100% bonus overdrive benefits, and it's now only 50%. And they changed how overdrive bonuses are calculated. Overdrive is really the bread and butter of Rafa's damage for his guns, because this used to give him over like 700% extra gun damage. The problem is it's all It's basically no bonus damage, which means that you're just getting straight gun damage. So it doesn't scale up that crazy high compared to the other characters like Harlowe and especially Cash. While it does have nice bonuses like Vitriol here, giving bonus corrosive damage, he can also get extra damage from first impressions. These have good synergy. Typically, his red and his blue tree would go together because Temerario, with 10 points from the Dancer class mod, would give you an insane scaling on your gun damage, which you could then offset with some of the others like El Centro and the La Garza there to be able to offset that. But right now, as it stands, red Rafa is in a very rough shape. Again, you can get the platinum time. It's just insanely hard to do it with Rafa now. People will always disagree with where I put these. It's just the brutal reality of tier lists. But you do need a lot of gear set up to make this feel even good. I think Peacebreaker Cannons, on my previous tier list that I did of this, it was S tier. Now I'm putting it down into the D tier. It's just a very brutal shell of its former self. It doesn't feel good to play. I did do a full video breaking this down, but right now it's really TDR throwing guns, which he is a TDR soldier, so I guess lore perspective it makes sense, but his skill tree does feel a little bit weird, and especially it became exposed whenever the Bullet Buddy Deluxe got nerfed, the Dancer class mod got nerfed, and possibly the most brutal nerf to Rafa, Toric Stickies got nerfed. So yeah, he's in a bit of a rough spot right now, so I do think the D tier is justified for this. Again, you can get platinum with it. I just want to make that very clear. And finally, we got the Apophis Lance. Now, I think Apophis Lance could have some changes because it's weird. You're incentivized to hold on to it, but the best skill here is metal management, giving his gun no ammo duration, so you can shoot off guns pretty quickly. They did put in the issue tracker that they're going to fix the bombastic class mod because it can give 1 point into this to make it the duration 4 seconds. So we will see a nice change when that happens, but the whole build is incentivized around using Sangre por Sangre here to be able to get your action skill back and basically charging it up to get El Soldado so it does increase your gun damage to a pretty crazy amount, and then using beam tossers. So it is pretty silly, but you want to have multiple stelliums for this build, and basically what you're doing is you're gonna shoot that off 1 time so that you get the extra you get the 2 seconds of metal management to blast away. You can also use an underbarrel of some other weapons, but you can see it does good damage, but we're relying heavily on multiple underbarrels, and the problem with this is it requires a stellium, which is a purple gun. You can't farm it, but you can get the Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 platinum time while doing this. Again, with all of these builds, this one just is very gimmicky to possibly do. The Buster class mod doesn't even like fit very well here. You're still likely wanting to use the Dancer class mod, so yeah, it's a weird one. You're basically just trying to get as many underbarrels from the stellium off as possible. You do have others to shoot off as well, but you can see here, using that gives you an insane amount of damage just from the underbarrels getting to launch off a lot of the time, but platinum possible. Again, in my mind, this falls under the gimmick build type of playstyle because we're spamming underbarrels. I personally don't enjoy doing that. I don't know about you guys, but I just don't think that that is a fun way to play. So Apophis Lance, it's another one that just feels pretty lackluster in terms of damage output. Outside of farming for multiple stelliums is the perfect role. You can use some other underbarrels, but they just don't really do the same damage. Like there is the Kickballer, which is a bit easier to farm. I'm going to put Apophis Lance down the C tier as well, just because there's a lot of, I've talked about this in detail in my Rafa video, which I'll also have linked in the comments, but with this, it has some skills that feel like they belong in the green skill tree. The green skill tree has things like increased splash damage and shock damage, which feel like they fit here with this because it's the shock ordnance damage. Some of Rafa's skill trees just feel like they're a bit of a mess, and yeah, this one is more so another gimmick build. Now, Harlowe actually had a bit of a switch up in the meta. Her new class mod, the Plasma Fill, I found a build that actually works very powerful for her after a lot of testing. But the Chroma Accelerator here, this turns, like, her build with this is fun, but this got nerfed pretty heavily over the course of the play, over the game. But it's the big problem is it turns it all into radiation damage. The newest update, or the Mad Ellie DLC, actually gave us a reliable way to boost our damage here, because previously radiation damage, especially going into shock, armor, and red health bars often, isn't truly amazing. But with this setup, you typically want to get Demon Core, try to scale up the skill damage of Chroma Accelerator as much as possible to give yourself further damage on Neutron Capture, which gives our gunshots 4% of the action skill damage dealt. Before the game launched, this is 10%. It was actually pretty insane, but it did get fully converted to radiation damage, so you don't deal your normal gun damage. And the buff that I was talking about is the bismuth tipped dagger. You do need the DLC to get this. This is an 8 charge grenade, and every time that you attach one, the enemies will take 15% more radiation damage for each attached dagger. What's great about that is you can spam these daggers to get a more radiation damage that the enemy will take, which means that our action skill deals more damage, which means that neutron capture deals more damage, which means that we're just doing a lot more damage. So basically what you're doing is throwing off your neutron capture, tossing out as many grenades as possible. Harlowe gets her action skill back really quickly, and it's possible to get the platinum time. It's just a little bit more frustrating to do, especially because the damage is not really amazing because radiation damage is limiting you. The big problem, Subjugator is impossible with this build, so yeah, don't go attempting that. Creative Burst used to be something I would say is like a close to, like at the game's launch, that was S tier. It did get taken down a notch here, and this is honestly a build that I would have to say is B tier. Yeah, I'm gonna put it just above Arc Knives. I think Vengeance is a bit better. It just has a lot of counters to it. It's not amazing against Bloomreaper. It's good against mobbing in general. Like, it's a not bad build. I just would say that there's a lot of better ones in this game. We haven't had an S tier yet, but Cosmic Brilliance. I'm sure everybody knows how good this skill tree is. This is what I think to be one of the most complete skill trees in the game before we look into Cash, who obviously has some pretty crazy abilities here. The reason it's so good is it's good for solo play. It's amazing for team play because she's kind of like the support class in this game. With the Flux Generator, you toss this out. You want to take Group Study here, which is going to create a Halo sidekick for each of your teammates to boost their gun damage. But the big combination here is the infinite crits, which you get from Excited State. Whenever an enemy is damaged by Harlowe's action skill, the next shot that will be an automatic critical hit. With the Nuclear Winter, this turns our gun damage whenever we're in the Flux Generator or outside of it into action skill damage. So this makes Excited State trigger, giving us infinite critical hits, and even furthermore synergetic here is critical funding. Whenever we critically hit an enemy, there's a chance to entangle it and refill a portion of our gun's magazine. That is an important thing to note. Refill is a lot different from how Vex and others get their ammo back. They get it by taking from the reserves. Harlowe creates that ammo, which means with Subjugator and Thol, who have, you need a lot of ammo to take out of them, this is just super powerful. This is one of the builds that I played with whenever the new DLC dropped, and with the Hellwalker, you shred through that second phase because you're just constantly putting out a ton of damage. They're multi-pellets with the shotgun, so you trigger this really easily. And furthermore, since we got infinite crits, we're also dealing 40% bonus radiation damage. This is where Harlowe gets crazy because she does have ways to increase her gun damage. Like, this gives you 50% extra gun damage when you irradiate an enemy, which scales off Meltdown, giving you radiation damage. But that gun damage means that bonus damage is taking that into the equation. She also can increase critical hit damage. You're constantly entangling. She can also entangle enemies when you apply a status effect on the enemy, which is very easy to do. She has one of the best skills in the game with Decoherence, which gives you bonus damage to entangled enemies, which is basically everyone that you're facing off against. And bonus damage, again, is really nice because it's taking all of our gun damage increases, so all of our class mod damage increases and all that gets added right into this. It also gives us the entangled enemy giving ourselves action skill cooldown rate, but that's not really important because we also have latent charge giving bonus damage. Bonus damage, bonus damage, bonus damage. The most crazy skill here, and this is amazing if you're playing with your friends, Confirmative Reality. When we shoot an entangled enemy, she and all allies restore a portion of their action skill cooldown. 1.5, you only need 1 or 2 points. I'm doing 3 because I'm going to show you guys a cool blue skill tree build. But what this means is that when your action skill ends, you just shoot a shotgun a couple times, you get your action skill back. And most effective is it allows you to use whatever type of gun you want here. That is really fun because this just doesn't limit you to really anything. You can use heavy ordnance because she's refilling her ammo with it, so you can throw at Heimdalls. She can use the Scoot and Shoot. My favorite though, I love the Hellwalker, which just recently got a buff. And she uses the Hellwalker really well because she gets infinite shots with it, so you don't have to do that reload after every pellet. And it does pretty insane amounts of damage. So yeah, you got lots of options. The new pearlescent weapons work really well. She benefits from the Gomi, the Juliet Sparkle, and even the Jailbroken Gatling can get you the platinum time. This is a fun setup. You get a bunch of bonus damage. And basically you can just fire away with your shotgun here. This plays a cool little guitar riff. I love the Hellwalker, but she is really insane because you're great with solo play, you're great with teams. You can do everything with this build. It feels really well constructed. I know some people think that it's not well constructed because it's so synergetic, but I like it because it's fun. It has a clear meaning on what it's meant to do. You're a great support. Like if you want to play with a friend, be green skill tree Harlowe. This is the best support build in the game, but it's also one of the best solo play builds in the game. Not reliant on gear, because you can use whatever class mod you want. You can use whatever shield, you can use whatever ordnance, you can use whatever, everything here is up to you. Obviously elemental matching does make a big difference, but yeah, confirmative reality, make sure that you have infinite uptime on your action skill, which gives a lot of benefits. She has life steal. She has over shield generation. So whenever your action skill deals damage to an enemy, you get shield capacity. And if your shields are full, you get over shield. Insane, absolutely insane. Everything about this skill tree is very powerful. This is one of the best in the game, and I'd be silly if I didn't throw this up into the S tier. Like, easily one of the best in the entire game. It's synergetic, it's fun to play, great support. I've talked about it enough, it's good. Now, Seize the Day, however, this was previously thought to be one of the worst in the game, and I previously thought it was too, but everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. We got the Plasma Fill here, which whenever we use Stasis, it deals bonus cryo damage. Cool, doesn't really matter. But for bosses, additional bonus radiation area damage to enemies that are immune to Stasis. This damage is increased by our action skill cooldown rate. You know what's awesome? The blue skill tree, it's all about action skill cooldown rate. Action skill cooldown rate. It's too cool for school. So with this one, we have a lot of synergies here, critical hit chance, and also triple point here, which gives us bonus cryo damage to enemies that are entangled. And if we deal cryo damage, we get even further bonus cryo. We get cold plunge here, which gives us as a way to slam enemies. What's fun about slams is they're not something that typically works very well, but this is great for mobbing, but this also triggers groundbreaker. This is actually really silly. I'm going to show you guys a really fun build setup using the convergence shotgun and the plasma fill. I'm not even perfectly min-maxing skillcraft as 4 out of 3. But with this setup, what we want to do is get in there, action skill. Which you see, we got our action skill back. 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 All you have to do is shoot the convergence shotgun and you get infinite action skill. It does some pretty good damage as you see here against Subjugator. So boom, activate it. You want to get in and slam them, but obviously he's flying, so you can't really slam him. If you can jump up and melee him, it does some pretty crazy damage. I hate these eyeballs. And boom, there we go, took him out. It's funny to use this against bosses, because previously it just did not seem possible. You got grenades here that give you even further damage. But basically what you're trying to do is get a bunch of damage for Groundbreaker and slam! And see you later, Thol. Goodbye. Seen his health bar? Then you didn't. It's insane. And the gear, like, you can get a bad roll in this and it doesn't really matter too much. Like, the skills don't really do the damage. It's that bonus radiation area damage, which is then taking a lot of our damage increases from like triple point and stuff. Also, we get life steal from cryo damage, and we deal bonus cryo damage with all sources with unstable isotope, which is a kill skill. So we're constantly regenerating our health. Honestly, the blue skill tree was one of the worst, but all it takes is one good class mod to really elevate it. But this is gear dependent. You do have to clear Ultimate Vault. You do have to clear Subjugator and Thol to get this class mod. Higher chance of getting it from higher Ultimate Vault Hunter levels. But it's funny. This build can actually compete. Groundbreaker really does boost this up, and it can get Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 time. I am going to relegate this to kind of a gimmicky build here, but I will put it right around the Creative Burst. It's funny enough, this is her best like mobbing outside of, we're not talking about that. Comparing to Creative Burst, it's better for mobbing. Creative Burst is better for bossings in some situations, but I actually think Seize the Day is a little bit better in some situations. But it is kind of feeling like it's borderline gimmicky in terms of its effects. I think it is. Honestly, it's probably a little bit easier to get the Platinum Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 time. From my testing, if you go with the builds that I'll have linked in the comments, try it out and see. The blue one is honestly surprisingly decent. Not good enough to put it into a higher tier, but I'll at least toss it a bone and put it into the B tier. Before we talk about cash, oh brother, this guy rocks. He's crazy, absolutely crazy. I'll have all builds linked in the comments. All 3 of his skill trees are pretty good at clearing the newest content. Now, I'm going to start off with the Gambit sleight of hand setup here, luck of the draw. Blue skill tree cache is crazy. Now, I just posted a build for this yesterday. There's many builds that use the blue skill tree, but he's got some of the most powerful skills in the game because anti-up is insane with the Hot Slugger, which also happens to be his best weapon because when you reload, you have a chance to go into Windfall. It has the fastest reload speed, single magazine, so it gives crazy damage with anti-up, and also no limit gives you upwards of 20 fortune stacks. And go into your skills, press the Y to go view your stats. Anti-up. Plus 780% gun damage, plus 500% melee damage, plus 1275% skill damage. Yeah, that's real. That is real. That's not even the craziest part about this though. So you can get easy fortune stacks by using alchemy here, because this is whenever we apply a status effect, we get a single fortune stack. With a single don't go Jason waterfall grenade, this can give us 20 stacks in seconds. It's silly. We also have some of the craziest abilities here. Basically, whenever we fail to enter windfall, we get a stack of fortune. So as we shoot and reload our gun, we keep getting more fortune stacks. When we get a stack of fortune, we restore our action skill cooldown, which means we can basically get infinite amount of cards here. Anti-up obviously giving us that insane amount of damage. This is best used with the hot slugger, 20 stacks. You get extra damage from this. Action skill cooldown rate, again, amazing. Well, I'm mixing in this skill tree here, and I will have this build linked because we're getting bonus damage from Watts for Dinner and the green skill tree Red Moon Rising. And we're going to use the Vampiric Touch cards here alongside the Freezing Shards. Funny thing, all these cards are named after D&D spells. Big D&D fan here. But what's crazy about this is early game, you also have Cowboy. Whenever we trigger Windfall, our action skill will automatically get recharged. So you literally have infinite action skill throughout the entire game for leveling. So the way to do this is shoot, reload, shoot, reload, shoot, reload. I want to go into Windfall. Let me go into Windfall. Let me go into Windfall. And we didn't enter Windfall. That sucks. Throw a grenade. We have 11 stacks right now. So if I get a grenade off on one of these, you can see the stacks beside my health bar. It now got maxed out. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the insta death card. So boom, insta death card and insta death card. You saw it there. How this is working is, since these have so much health, using those cards there, it's pretty silly how it works, but those cards will do infinite damage. They take our bonus damage and then they store it up and do some pretty crazy stuff. I didn't enter Windfall, crap. I should put my cards away. Basically, we're trying to go into Windfall, pull out the card deck, and then we want to have the red card in our hand here. So red card, take out that enemy, take out Thol with a single card. This is insane how powerful it is. We get our action skill back immediately because we toss out a grenade there. And as soon as an enemy is there to give ourselves fortune stacks, you can see the bottom right hand side of the screen, we then start getting fortune stacks where we try to go into our Windfall, where we're trying to throw this at a target that's not a boss type enemy. So right here, boom, and then boom, I missed. All right, let's try this again. Pull out our cards here. We want the instant death card, which it will pull. There we go, we got it. Don't miss. Boom, one shot. Yeah, that's real. Doing this live is hard, honestly, trying to think of my train of thought and read my script and go off all of that. But you saw enough there. It can one-shot all three of the first phases, and then once you get to that second phase of Thol, you have to throw two of them. You have to do it twice. There's a lot of mobs there. It is really easy. This is crazy. Not to mention, there's a lot of great synergies here. And even, like, one of the craziest parts is alchemy is a single skill that gives us a stack of fortune whenever you apply an elemental effect, which means that if you're using red or green, a single point there is giving you massive benefit. This could have been further down, and it would have, like, obviously changed the whole formula of it, but very powerful skill that we get early on. I gotta be honest with you guys, Cash is pretty strong. I'm putting this up in the S tier. Even without using that setup, I just want to show it at its peak. It's still very strong. This doesn't require you to have any gear either, and it's crazy powerful. Also fun to play. There's many different ways to do this as well, I want to mention. Vigorish will give you bonus damage whenever you use your action skill, and then you can also get Sweet in the Pot, which gives you bonus damage, which is funny because it'll actually trigger and give you an infinite amount of that. There's like 5 or 6 different builds. Cash is one of the best designed Vault Hunters in the history of Gearbox and Borderlands. I love it. He's fun. Please don't nerf him. Please don't nerf him. And the way this is working, I should have even further clarified. We'll have the build link so you can see it in action. Groundbreaker is triggered upon melee attacks. And yeah, the cooler is a melee attack. So it's not melee damage, it's a melee attack. It triggers Groundbreaker. It's insane. Now, the Rolling Bones Claromancy here is pretty insane as well. Where this really does benefit is it has Turn of Fade, Windfall skill giving us Life Steal and Overshield Steal. So he's got tankiness. You can toss out bones pretty much endlessly. And this build can use pretty much whatever type of weapon that you want. You can use the Flak Cannon, the new heavy ordnance. It gets infinite ammo. This is mixing in with the red skill tree. Going full green can work, but Cash has a lot of synergies here that we want to take advantage of. The green skill tree is fantastic though, because it lets you use whatever type of weapon you want. And with a particular, there's a few good class mods here. They basically will allow you to have infinite bones, so you can keep tossing out your action skill like infinitely. And you see there, the damage is insane. It's fun to play. You got so many different options. Like, I was just messing around and using the new pearls here. Easy enough to get Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 Platinum time. And I'm not even like min-maxing with this particular build. it's just so powerful. You got a lot of bones you can toss out. They can give you a number of effects. They can even give you a revive, so you can get back up off of your feet. You can use pretty much whatever type of guns. I'm just using the Constable there. I swapped to the Jailbroken Gatling, which is not even a meta gun. It can use it pretty well. And it even has the Harlowe, or the Herald, doing some pretty crazy stuff as well. Yeah, the green skill tree across the board is quite strong. I'm not even tossing at the bones too much. There I go. I started tossing them there, but they don't do a whole lot of damage. They're there to scale up our damage and more so to give us a bunch of extra added in effects. But yeah, you got full range to use a variety of different weapons and still have them do some pretty crazy stuff. And it shreds through everything, getting you Platinum, Ultimate Vault Hunter 7, no problemo. The Angry Totem, which is the bottom totem on the list here. This, whenever you roll 10s, you spawn an Angry Totem that gives Crash increased gun damage over time. If you're able to keep this alive using a few different skills here, which can give them health, it scales your damage to pretty insane amounts. You also have the Mighty 9, which will give you, it'll back, if you go down, you get back up and it eats one of your bone totems and gives you a charge back. Commotions 11 can give them bonus damage. There's a lot of really fun skills here, but the big ones are Turn of Fate, giving your Windfall the ability to lifesteal, which is obviously really strong. Can't Stop Winning, which lets you critically hit and go into Windfall. Taking a single point of this with a shotgun basically ensures you're in Windfall at all times. He also has Luckless, which can jinx enemies, which makes them take 20% more damage and they deal 30% less damage. This works with Amon's Gut Punch as well. He also has a Cursed Bones. Whenever you deal action skill damage to an enemy, you can get this on class mods, which means that you constantly keep dealing damage. It's pretty crazy. This is more so a gun focused build. If you want to play the gun cache, I do have a build that I'll have linked in the comments where you use this and a little bit of the red skill tree to do insane damage with it. Now, where does it stack up with our others here? I think it's really good, but I feel like Cosmic Brilliance Harlowe just brings a little bit more value. It's still S tier though. It's better than pretty much everything else in this game. It's really strong. It's also fun to play. I like tossing at the dice. Again, D&D fan. Even though the blue skill tree is more D&D themed, this one is rolling dice. It's good. And we're ending off with Crossfire Cache. This is also insane. You may have heard the nerfs to from Gloam to Glow. Not really much of a nerf because it still works very well. You just have to dip into the green skill tree and grab Turn of Fate. This will give us lifesteal. There's even class mods that can give us points into that, so you don't even have to dip into the green skill tree. Basically what happens is whenever we lose a fortune stack, we get bonus damage equal to our overshield and drain a portion of our overshield. This does insane damage with the bot. It does insane damage with convergence, flash cyclone, anything that shoots a lot of pellets off really quickly. Even the wombo combo are affected really well. So the easy way to trigger losing a fortune stack is to slide with a single point into Dusty Trail, which is right beside it. Insane. So that's not even the best setup for this. It's just there's so many really good synergies here with the red skill tree. If you want to use the crossfire skill and just do insane damage with that, you can. All you have to do is go into your action skill here, activate the rockets, and then press your left mouse button to shoot fast. And you saw it there, it was melting Subjugator. This is so funny. I love being in third person, especially with the guns where he's like, wow, wow, wow. It's a funny one. It's a powerful skill. And basically, throw a grenade, you're gonna get back into your action skill. Now, what's funny about this is he can throw grenades, Rafa cannot in his green and blue skill trees. So, not to vent about Rafa again, but Cache is just so powerful and you can see it right there. And again, it's the same old, use the hot slugger to get your action skill back and then go into your action here, blast away. So anyways, I started blasting. Yeah, Danny DeVito, the build. This is so crazy. And then same deal here against the third phase of this fight. If you ever leave it, all you have to do is shoot and reload your hot slugger here. And then we have 20 stacks of fortune pretty much at all times. All you have to do is toss a grenade to get it back if you don't have it. And the best way to reload that is to hold down your fire button, just spam the reload button. Boom, we can go back into our action skill and then just delete Subjugator. And it works against Thol here too. So yeah, it's crazy. It also can get bonus incendiary damage, which is going to further obviously rip apart a red health bar. But you see it there, folks. This is his action skill, just pointing the screen in its general direction and pressing your mouse button or your trigger on your controller. Insane damage. It's powerful. It's strong. It's fun. It's one of the best in the game. And yeah, I think Cache is very well designed. He's very strong, but he's fun to play. It makes your, like, if you play through the game for the first time as Cache, he does kind of stomp a lot of the content, but in Ultimate Vault Hunter 7, he's one of the most enjoyable in my opinion to play. Also voiced by John Eric Bentley, who voices Barrett in the Final Fantasy 7 remake. So great. Like, I really enjoyed Cache as a whole. Great character, and you see it there. Platinum has never been easier. All three skill trees can do it. And with the whale class one, obviously that is pretty strong too. And that build wasn't even fully min-maxed either. Basically, you're looking for a reload or a fire rate here. This works in crossfire. This gives us bonus incendiary damage, which again, fire damage is really good right now from Thol's big health bar. But you also can get brimstone, which gives us increased reload speed, and fire rate will take benefits from reload speed. So if you have anything that boosts up your reload speed, that gives us a further increased fire rate. I didn't even have that fully maxed out. You can shoot your gun even quicker if you have the right class mods. That's going to further boost that up. And the other insane synergy from this skill tree is that we got, I guess, a kinetic damage boost or truck full of nitro, giving us bonus kinetic damage on ordnance and gear. So again, you can go build fully into ordnance or you can build fully into gun. But the thing is, War Wagon. Whenever we deal kinetic damage to an enemy, we get a chance to refill our ammo and restore action skill duration with diminishing returns. Ammo refilled is 10% of the current mag, goes up to 50%, and you have a pretty solid chance of restoring this with kinetic damage. You can turn everything into kinetic damage with Nothing Beats Lead, which turns a portion of all non-bonus elemental damage into kinetic damage, and this will increase that amount of damage. So you can use a fire gun, get your infinite ammo back. You also have Trick Shot, which will do kinetic damage. So there's this spec here. There's the Gloam to Glow, which gives insane overshield damage. You do want to, again, have your overshield generated from the Turn of Fate from the green skill tree and have a shield that's going to allow you to do that. There's actually a perfect shield that just dropped from the newest boss with the Collector here. This shield has a capacity with a double turtle roll of 356,000. Yeah, that's crazy. Ensuring you'll always have Gloam to Glow active because you'll never run into your health getting lowered, so you'd have to use Turn of Fate, and Turn of Fate will just keep giving you overshield steal. It doesn't give you shield steal, it gives you overshield. So you'll always have overshield to give yourself Gloam to Glow damage. You can slide and activate it. This will give you further damage for every fortune stack you lose, or you can freeze your action skill duration. Like, all the skills here are good. He also has Ride to Ruin, which lets him get his action skill back really quickly. So yeah, everything in Cash's red skill tree synergizes well together. So to rank this, I'd have to say this one, I do feel like the blue skill tree just is a bit better, but it's a toss-up between the two of these. The blue skill tree just benefits things a little bit more for all builds, and it has anti-up, which, as you saw, can give like 1200% action skill damage and insane scaling overall. 800% gun damage, it's nuts. The red skill tree, obviously very powerful too, as you guys saw. Cosmic Brilliance is just really good for team play as well as solo play. It does slightly edge out, like these are all very close in comparison to their skill. Like the S tier compared to A tier is quite a jump. Even Dead Ringer is pretty crazy, but you do have to rely on both of these here, whereas with Cash, you can spec into a single skill tree and get crazy damage, or you can mix and match. You can do a lot of things with Cash. He's very well designed. I think Cash is one of the best they've ever done. I hope they don't nerf him because he is really fun to play. So yeah, this tier list looks a lot different from my last one where you had Peacebreaker cannons up at the top. Now it's kind of fallen off big time with all the nerfs that have happened, but there's been a lot of changes to the game. I never would have thought Seize the Day would be so good, but let me know your thoughts respectfully in the comments here. And if you're curious about anything, watch the video. I know a lot of people skip right to the end and just give their thoughts based on the tiers that they see here, but there's a lot of good details and context for why these are all put here. All of these can get the platinum time. I'm going to say that just one more time here. They can get the platinum time in Ultimate Vault Hunter 7. Just some are like gear reliant and really hard to do. Others like Cash, or you can do this blindfolded with one arm tied behind your back. But if this video is fun or useful, please consider hitting the subscribe button below. Hope you guys all have an incredible day, and we'll catch you in the next one.